Welcome to Dan's Crypto Adventures. Today we're going to build another mining rig, and we're going to be starting with the frame right here that I built in a previous video. But today we're going to be installing all of the components into the system and turning it on and seeing what happens. So I'm not going to go into depth into every component that I put into this, probably save that for another video, but this is mainly going to be putting all of those components into the system. And I am, with this video, I am assuming that you guys know how to build a computer, and so we're just going to be going through the how to build a mining rig. For example, here's the main board that we're going to be using. I've already installed the CPU, the stock cooler, and 4 gigs of RAM. The CPU is a Pentium G4400, again with the stock fan on it. The RAM is the DDR4 4 gig G-Skill, just cheapest you can find. Doesn't really matter. I use Simple Mining OS, so I just have a USB stick. It's already in there, so I'm not going to be mounting a hard drive to the frame. But I will show you guys how to do that if you would like to do that, and where it could go on this particular frame. So the first thing is getting the main board installed, and so let's get everything in position. Alright, so the main board is going to go right here in the middle, and so we need to line up the holes in the main board with the wood slats that are underneath it. In my build video, I made sure to pay attention to where where the holes are and what's underneath there. So the first step is I have these little bumpers, they're called. It's a little rubber pad. It's a square pad, and so I'm going to put one of these under each of the holes. You can really use anything that's non-conductive. You don't want anything that conducts electricity. These work great. You can pick these up just about anywhere. Any home improvement store would carry these. And so the first thing is I need to know where to put those. So once you get the main board lined up where you want it, I have here just a small screwdriver. You can really use anything, a nail, drill bit, anything small that can fit through the hole where the screws are supposed to go. So I'm going to kind of stick it through there, and then use a little hammer, give a little tap, just so it does a little indentation on the wood so we know where to put the pad. So we're going to do that everywhere. Then we can set this aside for a couple of minutes while we prepare this. So now again, we're going to take these little rubber pads and put those wherever we see an indent. Push it down so it sticks on there pretty good. Alright, so we got all of our pads where all of the screw holes are. So now we're going to set our main board back, make sure everything gets lined up properly. You want a pad under every screw hole. I got one off on this side, so I definitely need to fix that. That's why we got to double check, make sure we get them. Alright, so every screw I look through now, I see, the center almost. Okay, so now every screw hole I look through, I see one of those pads. So now we're going to use a wood screw. This is just a simple, I think it's a number 6 3/4 inch wood screw. And now we're just going to screw through the hole in the main board, through that rubber pad, and into the wood. Now we're not trying to screw this thing down tight. We just want the head of the screw just touching the board, just so it doesn't move around. You don't want it any tighter than that. So I'm going to find my screwdriver here and attach all these, and I'll be right back. Alright, so we've got the main board secured down to the wood slats. So I put a screw in each of these holes where there's a rubber boot foot here, and again, I just barely got it down tight. I don't want the board flexing or anything where those screw holes are. And as I was screwing down the board, I realized I never told you guys what board it was. So it is an Asus Prime Z270A. So this has 7 PCIe slots, and then there's 2 M.2 slots. And I've never done an M.2 board, with the conversion to a PCI, so I thought that'd be kind of fun to do. So if you guys don't know what that is, there's 2 M.2 slots on here, and there's these little adapters you can buy, look like so. And these go in the M.2 slot. They come with little power adapters here, so you plug the right way. You plug this into here on that little board there, and then you got a Molex connector, so it goes to your power, and then it gives you another PCIe slot. This is what I'm going to be putting in here. Now I've only got 7 cards at this time. My intention is to put 8 cards in this rig right here. But I've only got 7, so that's where we're going to start. So there we have it. Now I'm going to grab the power supply and start mounting that, so hang on just a second. Alright, so I've got my power supply. I am going with the Corsair RM1000i. It's a 1000 watt gold rated power supply. So that is what I intend to use here. I'm going to have 8 cards in here, 1060 Ti's, and so those are 75 watts. So I'm hoping that this is enough. This rig is big enough to have 2 power supplies. And my thinking is I could have one right here, which is where I'll put this one for now. But I could, in the future, if I needed, I could put a second one over here. So again, right now with 8 1060s, I think I'll be okay. If I were to upgrade at some point in the future to 1080 Ti's or something like that, then I would not be. And I would need to go to a second power supply. So I'm going to mount this on this side over here. So I want the power button and the cord facing the front, and all the connections for everything facing the back. And so I'm going to put it here on this side. Now to mount these, what I like to do is take some of the angle that we have, or maybe a slightly smaller piece like this is, and cut a little piece. And then on the bottom of it, drill some holes that line up with the mounting holes on the power supply, so that I can attach this piece of metal to the power supply. And then I can mount this inside of here. So this little strip of metal here is attached to this slot here and goes over to attach this one, so make sure it's good and tight. Then I'll have 2 screw holes mounting to the power supply. So that usually gives it a pretty sturdy, I think they'll give it a pretty sturdy base to it. So I'm going to go ahead and make those connections. I have some screws here. These are the screws that go with the power supply. Now I think about it, I think the ones that came with it were too short. And so I had to get some that were a little bit longer. But we can go ahead and attach those. Great, so that is attached. So now we'll set it into place. And I want to move it as far as I can this way, but I still want it to be on the wood slat. So if I get too far, I'll be hanging off a little bit. So I just want the edge of it with this line up with the slat on this side. This angle piece still goes all the way over to catch this slat, so I'm going to put a screw here. It's still going into something. And so I think that's a good spot right there. So I'm going to grab some screws. Apparently I didn't bring those over, and screw that down. Alright, so I've got just some wood screws here. I don't even know what you call these. These are kind of some weird shaped ones. Any wood screw would be fine. Or you could use a self-tapping sheet metal screw to go through this piece of metal and into the wood, or drill a hole first through the metal and then use a wood screw, which I'm doing here. So let's attach this, 2 screws. Alright, there we go. So that is secure. Alright, and as I mentioned earlier, I use a USB drive stick for this. I use Simple Mining OS, but there are some options if you wanted to do a hard drive. I do have a hard drive sitting right here. So this is an SSD. If you wanted a good place that I've mounted these in the past, I like everything to be inside the frame, so I don't want things sticking out. But in the past, I have mounted them right here on the back. It tends to give plenty of room right here to get the wires to make this turn. The wires come out the back of the power supply and make the turn to make all the connections. So it's out of the way. There's really no hot air blowing directly on it. So that's a good spot to do it. And all you do is similar to how I did this. Kind of line up the screw holes that are on the back of this, drill them through the metal frame here, and then screw from the back in through the piece of metal into the back of the SSD, and it will secure perfectly fine right there. For this rig, I'm not going to put that on there, but if you want to use Windows or another operating system or something to run this, that's fine. That would work. That is an option. Alright, so I think I'm ready to start bringing over some graphics cards. So let me bring those over and we'll start laying those out. Alright, so I have brought over all of my graphics cards. So here is one of those. And I went ahead and attached the riser to the bottom of the graphics card and set it in place. So some of you may not know what a riser is. This is a riser. So on the main board, there's the PCIe slots. There's the long ones, which are the times 16, and the short ones, which are the times 1. We want to have 8 cards on here. There's not, and graphics cards come with a long slot that's 16 times 16. There's only 3 on here, but we need to utilize the small ones. And we can't physically fit all of these cards right down here on the board. And so what we use is a riser. And they generally come with 3 components. I think the back 4 components. The first here is what the graphics card actually mounts into, and there's a little white, typically white, sliding little plastic piece here that secures it to the graphics card. So the way that you install it, just like you do on the board, you simply push it onto the back of the card. Make sure it's lined up the correct direction. It can only go in one way. And then once you get it in there, then it definitely tighten the little plastic piece. I like to use a little screwdriver to do that. Tighten the little plastic piece. And so that's what we're going to mount, elsewhere. And then the other components of the riser are a USB cable. And that simply plugs into the back of the riser that the board is attached to. And then the other end plugs into this little piece. So it would plug in here like so. Now this can plug into the main board in the times 2 slot. Like that. So now this card is connected to the times 1 slot on the main board. Okay? And then the other component is power. So on the back of the riser, there's a power component here. These can be various types and sizes. This is a 6-pin. You can also have SATA. You can have Molex. You can also, some of the newer risers also on top of the board have more than one option. So they might have the 6-pin on the back, and then on the side here they might have a SATA connection or a Molex connector on there. So you just got to look at what fits for your needs and what your power supply has enough cables of. A lot of risers, when you buy them, they come with adapters. So you could either plug a 6-pin directly into this, but most mining rigs are usually short on 6-pin and 8-pin plugs. You usually don't have a whole lot of them. So a lot of them come with little adapters here, which is a 6-pin to a SATA. So then you would just plug this adapter into the back of there. Now you can plug this into a SATA connection. So when we get to hooking up the wiring, we'll talk more about that. But that's basically how it works. So let's get this off so it's not in the way. So we've got our riser attached, and we're going to set it in place. So I've got all 8 cards. Now I have only 7 cards for this rig right now. So I've got the 7 that are going to go in here, and then I stole a card from another rig. Just to help get it lined up and positioned correctly. So I'll secure the riser now, and then I'll take the card back and put it in the other rig so it can be up and running. Now I'll go ahead and get this running with the 7 cards that I have. Once I get that 8th card, I'll put it in here. If you don't have the physical cards, if you only had, say, 1 card, you're just getting started, you could mount that by itself and leave nothing here. That's actually how I got started. My other rig, I built it with 1 card, and I ran that for probably a month, just to make sure I could do it, and make sure I understood how it worked and how to convert cryptocurrency back into US dollars. So I just wanted to make sure all that functioned and I could figure it out before I bought more cards, and so I did. So I bought more cards. But anyway, my point is, if you want to start with one, absolutely do that, and then buy the others as you have funds available. So these are all spaced out evenly. I like to have at least about 1.75 inches between each card. This is a pretty big frame here, so I've got more than that. But if you're just measuring it out, it requires some math. But you could space this out only having one card. The next step is to secure the cards to this top rail right here, and also the riser to the block of wood back here on the back. So to do that, we're going to use this right here for connecting the front clip here, this metal piece. This is a number 8 self-tapping sheet metal screw, 3/4 inch long. So that's going to use up here on the front. And then I'm going to use wood screws like so. So these are number 6 wood screw, 3/4 inch long. Same ones I used to secure down the main board down here. These I'm going to go directly through. Just kind of pull it out and show you guys. I'm going to go directly through the screw hole on the riser. So if you look closer at the risers, there's 4 screw holes, 2 here and then 2 here. And then on the back there's typically a foam pad of some sort, so that's on the back of it. So this will be mounted in my rig like so, and these 2 back here are on top of the piece of wood, so I'm going to screw through that hole into the wood. The front half of the riser is just kind of hanging in midair. I'll just leave it like that. It's really not a big deal, but I'm only going to put screw holes to the back. And again, I don't need any pads or anything under this. It already has a pad kind of built in. So that's what I'm going to do. So let me put this back together, and I'll show you guys how I do that. Okay. So, first thing that I'm going to do is take the self-tapping sheet metal screws and secure the top of the card to this frame, and then I'm going to use a long drill bit like that. I'm sorry, a drill like that, and put on a screw. Then I can leave the card in place with attached to the drill, and kind of reach down here and get one of those screws. That way I get it in the right position. I don't need to worry about it. I get it lined up, and then I can take the card out and put in the second screw. So I'm going to put all the screws in the front, and then 1 screw in each riser. Take all the cards out, put the second screw in each riser. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll be right back. One thing I want to point out real quick before I finish up mounting the graphics cards is when you're attaching those to this top rail with the sheet metal screws, and then also with the wood screws into this wood, there's all kinds of debris that's falling down. I know you can't see it on the camera there, but on this, I put down this towel here, and there's little metal shavings all over the place. If those were to fall on the main board, that could be a huge problem. That could ruin the whole board. And so put something down to protect it if you're doing that. And then even then, I would brush this off, and before you turn anything on, use compressed air or something along those lines to blow out and blow it out pretty thoroughly. To get anything off of the board, out of the power supply. You don't want any metal shavings in there. That would be very bad. Alright, so I'm going to finish mounting all these graphics cards. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got all the GPUs mounted in here. I did take that 8th GPU out, the 1070, to put it back in my other rig so I get it back up and running. One of the most important things with mining is uptime. You got to have everything up and running. So I took that card out just to get things lined up, so I can get my riser, go ahead and get it installed. So when I get the new graphics card in, it's already in place. I just pop it in there. But as soon as I was done that, I put it back in the other rig and turned it back on, and it's back up and mining. So I've got all these laid out. Let me show you real quick on the camera. So there is all the cards mounted. So there's a screw here in the front, and then in the risers in the back there's 1 screw there, and then on the other side on the same board there's a screw. and then the front of the riser is just kind of hanging off. It's not really touching anything, but it really doesn't matter. That's fine. And I got kind of a hodgepodge of cards here. I'm still kind of in the experimental phase, and so I've got, these are all 1060s. This here is a 6 gig, all the rest are 3 gigs, and we've got Gigabyte, PNY, Asus, EVGA, and other Asus. So we've got a wide range of cards here. Again, I'm just kind of trying things out to see what I like. So hopefully in the future I can buy more, and I just kind of want to know a little bit about all the different cards before I get to that point. So I think the only thing left at this point is wiring for the power supply. And so I'm going to spin this around and get all my wires and cables and everything stacked up right here, and then we'll go through the wiring process for everything. Alright, so I've got the rig turned around. I've got access to all of most of the plugs. I've got the back of the power supply here with all of its connections. I got the back of the risers. I can see all those plugs, everything on the main board I can see. Got a whole mess of wire sitting here. I've got a bunch of the 6-pin SATA for the risers we talked about earlier. Got a whole bunch of the USB cords with a PCIe adapter on the end. Got a bunch of the cables for the power supply. I've also got some adapters over here, which these turn, you plug a 6-pin into there, and then it spits out two 6+2s. So these I really don't like to use. If you're going to use sparingly, I think it's okay. Just don't go overboard with these. This power supply should have plenty of wattage to do all of this. I've just got to try to spread out all of its load. You don't want too much load going through one cable. So you want to spread it out as evenly as possible. So that's going to be the trick here, is to do that. So I'm going to start wiring some things up, and again, I'm going to try to use as few of these as possible, but I know I'm going to need some of them. So let's get started. So I like to do the big cores first, so that's the main board. Power right there. Alright, so we got that. Good, CPU, that's just the one I wanted. This is the CPU cable. And I do have a pretty thorough video, at least I think it's pretty thorough, on power supplies and all these cables and where they go and what they do. So if you have some questions on what all these cables are, I do recommend you watch that. I get a little bit more into depth on that. I'm not going to talk today too much about it. I'm just going to show you quickly what I'm plugging in and then plug it in. Alright, so those are good. Now we need to start hooking up all this stuff. Now for the cables, for the SATA connections that go to the risers, the general rule of thumb is do not plug in more than 2 things into these SATA, to one SATA cable. So that was the SATA cable there. Let me grab another one. So here's a SATA cable, SATA connections. So this end plugs into the power supply, so you're going to plug that in. This end has 4 SATA connections. You would not want to plug 4 risers into this. That is more power than this cable is capable of handling. So only do 2. That's kind of the rule of thumb. Only do 2. So there's other 2, just don't use them. So that one I ran, I'll use that for this second to last card here. Then my future card, I'll use the other end of it to plug in there. And then that cable's done. Can't use that for anything else. These furthest 2, I'm going to need these adapters simply because of the length. It's hard to make it work. Alright. Now, so I'm starting to get low on cables. Oh, that's fine. Alright, so I think we've got it. I think we've got all the power. Top of the cards are all plugged in. I've even got one hanging down here for this 8th when I get it. All of the risers. Oh, that riser's not plugged in. Missed one. Can't use that one. Can't use that one. Okay, so we've got to get another cable here. I got plenty of connectors around here, but I've already got 2 of each cord plugged in the other one, so I don't want to use that. That's not going to work either. So how can I get Alright, there we go. So we've got everything, all the power connectors. Let's make sure. Yep, we are good on that. Now we're going to take all of our USB cables and we're just going to plug them in and then toss them to the front somehow, somewhere. And then we'll spin this around to the front and connect all of those to the board. Alright, so let's turn it around. Alright, so now we got the rig turned around. Now I got this mess of USB cables coming through with a 1X PCI adapter already attached. Now one thing that I always like to do is when I'm looking at the rig online, the Simple Mining OS, you know, I always prefer for GPU 0 through GPU 7 to be in order. And it's kind of confusing as to how that works on the main board. So I'm going to show you guys how I think it works. There has been times where I have been wrong with this, but I think this is correct. So I think the first few numbers are the 16 slot, and then it goes back and does all the 1. So this would be GPU 0, GPU 1, GPU 2, GPU 3, 4, 5, 6. So I believe that is how it works. There has been a few times, most of the time that's correct, there has been a few times where it has not worked out that way. And I have no idea why. So I'm going to get these plugged in. And then we're about ready to hook it up to power. And I'm going to hope that that's correct. So I'm going to go by that theory because I want 0, 1, 2. It's easier for overclocking and that kind of thing if they're in physical order. At least for me anyway. Alright, so all those are plugged in. So I'm going to get a power cable, network cable, and I'll go ahead and get a monitor. Even though Simple Mining OS don't really need it, but it's nice to see it turn on and and that kind of thing. So I'm going to get all that, hook it up, and then we'll turn it on, see if it works. I think we are ready to go. We got the monitor, we got power, it's connected, hooked up. We've got a keyboard in case we need it, network cable, and power cable to the rig. So I think we're ready to turn it on. Now this board has already been in the miner, and so it is already, should anyway, already be set up to boot when the power comes on, and it also should automatically boot from the USB. But I got a keyboard here just in case it doesn't. So let's turn it on, see what happens. Looking to see if all the fans came on. They did, all the fans came on. CPU fan is on, we got a screen, that's definitely a good start. Yep, log it into Ubuntu. Alright, so Simple Mining OS is loading. So there we have it, it's working. Now let's see if we pick up all of the cards. So we got them all. We got all 7 cards, and it's hard to tell, but the 6 gig is GPU 0, which is the first one, so at least that one's correct. I don't really know what the other cards are looking at this. And I don't know why I went black. Oh, it restarted. Alright, let's see if it starts up this time. So I got the Simple Mining OS again. Let's see what it does this time. Again, it's got all 7 cards. Something failed. Overclocking failed. Restarting miner. So I'm going to log in on my laptop and see what is happening. I wonder if it's exceeding the power, for the power supply. So let's just restart. I'm going to turn that off till we look online and fix the overclocking on this. Alright, so I've logged in online. I'm scaling back all the overclocking for this rig. I had set it up previously. So I scaled that back. Hopefully that is the problem. So now we're going to save this. So now when I turn the rig back on, it should log back into Simple Mining OS, see the new overclocking settings, and set it for those. Hopefully that then will not be a problem. So let's turn it on. Alright, so here it is at the Simple Mining screen. Let's see what it does this time. So it looks like it's set the overclocking, it's got the 7 GPUs, set the difficulty. I don't see where it failed on the previous time. It said failed, I think up here right after the setting the power limit and core speed and all that stuff. So let's see if it starts mining. So it looks like it is. So yeah, it looks like it is. So I'm getting 2129, 2100 sols per second. I don't recall what my overclocking settings were offhand. This video isn't about setting up Simple Mining OS or the BIOS or anything like that. This is just kind of get everything installed physically. And then I'll probably do a video on setting the software up. Well, I have one done on Simple Mining OS, but I need to do one probably on the BIOS and what to look for on that. But so yeah, it's up and running. So that was a rejected share. So I saw an error right there. Goodbye. So I need to keep an eye on it. If you set up a new rig and you have problems, the first things you check are make sure the risers are all seated, or the GPU is seated in all the risers. That's one of the biggest things. And then so try that. If that doesn't solve the problem, then unhook a few of the GPUs and turn it on, see if you still have a problem. and then one by one add those GPUs back in. The next, to isolate where the problem is, when you find a problem, chances are it is the riser. So try replacing the riser, and hopefully that will fix it. If that does not, then it could be something else, graphics card, something else, main board, that kind of thing. But this seems to be up and running, so the day was a success. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Please give me a like and subscribe. So thank you. I hope to have another video out soon. Thanks. Bye.